Jacob Stone woke up to the hum of a new day, his senses alert in ways they hadn't been in decades. For 20 years, his world had been veiled in darkness, a cruel consequence of a freak accident. A shard of metal from a construction site had taken his sight in an instant, plunging him into a life of shadows. Doctors had called it irreparable optic nerve damage, a condition they believed science could never reverse. Jacob adjusted, though the loss carved an aching void in his soul. Life became an intricate dance of trust and dependence, especially on his wife Clara. Her unwavering support was the bedrock upon which he rebuilt his life. "It's us against the world," she would say, guiding his hand gently through the darkness. And Jacob believed her, because what choice did he have? He needed her more than he'd ever needed anyone. Clara became his eyes, his caretaker, his partner in a world he could no longer navigate alone. But everything changed after Jacob volunteered for an experimental medical trial. "No promises," the doctor had said, his voice filled with cautious optimism. "But there's a chance." Jacob had agreed more out of habit than hope. After years of disappointments, he had little faith left. Yet against all odds, the treatment worked. One quiet morning, just days after the procedure, his world exploded into color and light. The first thing Jacob saw was the sunlight spilling across the room. It felt surreal, almost foreign. His hands trembled as he reached for the bedside table, staring at the familiar objects he had only ever touched. The alarm clock, the stack of books Clara read to him at night, the photo frame. The photo. It was an image of them on their wedding day. Clara's radiant smile, her hand resting on his chest, her eyes filled with promises. It was the last thing he had seen before the accident took his sight, etched into his memory like a lifeline. And now, 20 years later, it was the first thing he saw again. Jacob sat frozen, overwhelmed with emotions, gratitude, disbelief, joy. He wanted to call Clara immediately, to share the miracle with her. But then an idea took root in his mind. Their anniversary was only 3 days away. What better gift could there be than revealing this incredible news on that special day? He decided to wait, to plan the perfect surprise. As the hours passed, Jacob explored his home with new eyes. The house he had memorized through touch felt different now. The walls were painted a color he didn't recognize. There were new pieces of furniture, sleek, modern designs that felt out of place. In the living room, a painting hung where their wedding portrait used to be. It was a landscape, beautiful but cold. It struck him as odd, but he dismissed the thought. After all, 20 years was a long time. Things were bound to change, even if he hadn't noticed. But then, as he moved through Clara's office, something caught his attention. A stack of unopened envelopes hidden behind a row of books. Curiosity got the better of him, and he tore one open. It was a bill. Overdue. The second envelope was the same. And the third. Jacob's heart raced. He knew Clara managed their finances, and she'd always reassured him that everything was fine. But why would she hide these? He placed the envelopes back where he found them, his mind buzzing with questions. The next day, Jacob noticed more unsettling details. Clara left for work early, as she often did, but this time he watched her go. From the window, he saw her enter a sleek black car parked across the street. A man was driving. Jacob's chest tightened. Clara had never mentioned a colleague picking her up, and the way she leaned toward the man, laughing, felt too intimate. When the car disappeared from view, Jacob turned back to the house, determined to uncover the truth. In Clara's closet, he found designer clothes he had never heard her mention, dresses with tags still attached, shoes worth more than his monthly disability check. He found a drawer filled with expensive jewelry he didn't recognize. Then, in her bedside table, he found a second phone. Jacob spent the rest of the day piecing together the fragments of a life he no longer recognized. On Clara's hidden phone, he found messages. Dozens of them. "I miss you. Can't wait to see you tonight." "I'll tell him soon, just a little longer." His hands trembled as he scrolled through the conversations. Photos accompanied the texts, Clara smiling in a restaurant he'd never visited, standing beside the man who had picked her up that morning. The betrayal stung, but Jacob wasn't done yet. He sat at their shared computer, determined to dig deeper. Passwords Clara had set were no match for him now that he could see. What he discovered shook him to his core. Their bank accounts were nearly drained, credit cards were maxed out. The house, his family home, left to him by his parents, had been mortgaged to the brink of foreclosure. The records showed payments to gambling websites, luxury stores, and transactions linked to private accounts he'd never heard of. And then there were the signatures, documents bearing his name, loan applications, legal forms, none of which he had ever signed. Clara had forged them all. The confrontation. By the third day, Jacob was ready. He sat at the kitchen table, the evidence laid out before him. His vision, now clear and strong, was fixed on the door as he waited for Clara to return. When she walked in, her cheerful smile faltered at the sight of him. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice tinged with nervousness. Jacob's voice was steady but cold. "I can see, Clara. I can see everything now." Her face went pale. "Jacob, don't," he interrupted, holding up a photograph of her and the man. "How long?" Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't deny it. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way." "How long?" he repeated, his voice rising. 10 years, she whispered. The words hit him like a blow. Half of their marriage had been a lie. Jacob filed for divorce the next day. The lawyer was stunned by the mountain of evidence he presented. Fraud, forgery, financial exploitation. Clara didn't contest the decision. She left the house that same afternoon, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As Jacob watched her go, a strange sense of relief washed over him. The truth had shattered his world, but it had also set him free. Months later, Jacob stood on the balcony of his new apartment, watching the city lights flicker below. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but so did something else, a quiet determination to rebuild. The darkness of blindness had taught him resilience, but the darkness of betrayal had taught him clarity. He vowed never to take his sight or his freedom for granted again. If you found Jacob's story as gripping and eye-opening as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who loves a good twist. What would you do if you were in Jacob's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, every story has a lesson. If you enjoyed this journey from darkness to truth, subscribe to Glowing Stories for more tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next big reveal.